Welcome to the Moser On Manufacturing podcast, brought to you by Jacket Media Co.
I'm just wild about Harry, and Harry's wild about me.
Hello, everyone. This is Lou Weiss from Manufacturing Talk Radio with Harry Moser from Reshore Initiative and Moser on Manufacturing. How you doing, Harry?
Oh, it's great to be back with you, Lou. We've had a good, I think, a very good series so far, and it's one of the highlights of my month.
Oh my God, how wonderful it is to hear that. Thank you. I appreciate that. So today, Harry, we're going to talk about your favorite topic about reshoring and rebuilding, and we're going to talk about how contract manufacturers need to do their thing to do a successful rebuilding and reshoring. Does that work for you?
That's the topic. Yep, looking forward to it.
All right, that's great. Harry, let's go. So,
Okay.
reshoring and contractors, not OEMs, but the little mom and pa's, the mid-range companies. What do they need to do to successfully rebuild and do the reshoring?
Now, let me expand the definition just a little bit to
Sure.
to not just contract manufacturers, but the supply chain companies that feed the product up to the big companies. So yes, like your shop's a Ford shop, clearly a contract manufacturer,
Right.
but there's also companies that sell pumps and fans and motors and the things that maybe have their own brand name on it, but that they don't sell to consumers, that they go into somebody else's assembly that gets onto the consumer. So I'm going to lump those together,
Right.
and I tend to divide them by size. And so I pulled some government statistics out, and to the extent that you can trust the government, in this I'll trust them. And
We trust our government.
okay, so establishments or factories bigger than 500, maybe 2.5 million people altogether. 3,000 factories, maybe 2.5 million employees. 100 to 499. So that's getting into the category we're talking about. 13,000 establishments, 2.6 million people. Okay. And then 1 to 99, 350,000 establishments or factories, and about 8 million people. So more than half, significantly more than half of the manufacturing employees are in that smaller size category. And that's really what we're talking about. So they're doing half or more of the total actual manufacturing that's happening in the country. That's
And
important.
this year actually was, I think, the first time in a long time where the population of manufacturing companies have gone up. Rather
Yeah, because it's been in a long downtrend. I read somewhere in the last, I don't know, between 2000 and 2010, maybe 80,000 or 90,000 manufacturing companies disappeared,
Yeah.
and with them, millions and 5 million jobs or whatever that
Right.
went away with them.
Right.
So numerically were really important, and I think the companies we're talking about are the most productive portions of U.S. manufacturing, because you take a big OEM, Boeing, Lockheed, General Motors, what have you. They're selling a branded product, and they can get away with a factory hourly rate of $300, $400 an hour or something like that. Whereas in a job shop like yours, and you're selling, if you're selling machine time, if you think of it as machine time,
Right.
$100 an hour, $80 an hour, somewhere in that kind of range,
Right.
is still for like so. So these big companies, because they have not a monopoly, but they got a pretty strong position with their brand. They're able to charge a premium for the work, and therefore I don't think they expect as much. Partially because their labor is more likely to be unionized, but in general, big factories just aren't as productive as mid-sized kind of factory. I think five people is too small, but somewhere between 25 and 100 is a very efficient place, I think, to be. So I think the kind of companies we're talking about are the most productive, but they're often, despite being more productive than the big companies, they're not typically not world competitive. So if you think of where do you find the best mid-sized companies in the world, most people would say Germany, because they've got something called the Mittelstand. The Mittel, I think, is middle, so it's the middle group of companies, and family-owned, very productive, very strong apprenticeship systems. The employee, the high school kid at the age of 16 comes in, becomes an apprentice, works his or her way up, finishes the apprenticeship system, works her way up in the company, knows the process, the product, the customers, the other employees, the company, works his way up, eventually becomes a vice president, maybe owns the company. So it's a great career opportunities there. And we haven't done as good a job of that whole system. So Germany has this great training system that helps theirs, and Germany, or say China, the shops are more aggressive than ours. So they sell harder and they can throw bodies at a project. Like I get maybe 3 or 4 emails a day from Chinese companies trying to sell me molds and dies and plastic parts. And I'm the reshoring guy. And I get maybe one a month from a U.S. company trying to sell me something. So these Chinese they're good business people. They're aggressive. They're hungry. They go out and they hustle the work, and we don't. As hard as they do.
If I'm not mistaken, Germany, their educational system, their public educational system has, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They also have training in manufacturing and training in technology and so on as part of the public training system. We don't have that.
Yeah, well, we have some. We used to have shop classes and things like that, mostly shut down. But in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, especially those core Germanic countries, they have that tradition. It came up through the guild system, over the last centuries. And at the age of 16, maybe at the age of 15, they go out and they do an internship for a week or two at a company. So they get some idea what's out there. And then at 16, 60% go to work as an apprentice, take a job as an apprentice full time. But of that time, let's say to start with, maybe 2 days a week, they're still at the technical high school studying math and physics and English and whatever. And then the other 3 days or so a week, they're actually making parts on a machine somewhere and being guided by a master. So you get really smart kids that here would unquestionably be told they have to go to university. Instead, you have these really smart kids going into the apprenticeship system.
So here, part of the problem in this country is that the parents love to have their kids go to school, go to college. We want you to go to college. We don't want you to working in a machine shop. We don't want you doing underwater welding. We don't want you doing that. They want you to go to college, get a degree, have a $200,000-$300,000 debt. It's a mistake.
Totally. and it's a mistake at the micro level for the individual. Like I read an article about some woman who was complaining because she hadn't gotten her college debt paid off yet by the government. And she said, this is unfair. When I was in high school, everybody said, you have to go, if you want to get ahead, if you want to have a good income, you have to go to university, you have to get a degree. And then I went ahead and I got the degree, and I've got $100,000 in debt, and the government won't pay my debt off for me. Now, that message should never be out there. The message should be, here's one route, go directly to university, it's fine, especially if you're going to go in engineering, metallurgy, something like that. But if you don't have 100,000 to pay for that, or 200,000, here's another choice. Go into an apprenticeship system and let your company that you go to work for pay for your education. And so you've got a job, no debt, somebody paying for your future education, and a career and money. What's wrong with this picture?
It makes perfect sense, but it still hasn't happened. They're still not paying off the college tuitions, or they're almost about to, maybe. Uh,
Well, I don't think they should. I mean, they should if there was fraud, if one of these colleges misrepresented the opportunities. But if the kid just walks into State University and says, I'm going to study sociology, and then they can't find any jobs as a sociology major, well, that's their fault for not research. Just like if you buy a machine for your Ford shop and the machine is the wrong size or the wrong tonnage, right? That's your fault. You didn't do your homework. So I think people have to, at that kind of an age, 18, whatever, they have to assume responsibility for the decisions that they made.
Harry, you have a tool that you have on your website, TOC, total cost, total
TCO.
TCO, sorry,
Yeah, you got
total
it.
cost of ownership. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because manufacturers, large or small, but particularly the small to medium size, which we're talking about now, the contractors, do they really know what their cost of operation is?
They know what their own internal costs are.
Right.
Allocations of costs and burden and all. They're very complicated, but still, they have a pretty good idea what their internal costs are. But the biggest fault I find is in their calculation of the total cost of product that they outsource. For example, if they compare the U.S. source to the Chinese or Indian source, they typically look at just the FOB price, and they ignore the total cost. And the total cost would be that FOB price plus duty, freight, carrying cost of inventory, risk of stocking out, intellectual property risk, all this kind of thing. And when you do that math, comparing U.S. to China, the U.S. win rate goes from 8% based on price to 32% based on total cost. And if there's a 15% Section 301 tariff, then it goes to 46%. So you go from 8% to 46% by doing the math. And
Right.
that's a big improvement. That's something
Huge,
Yogi Berra could have said something smart about.
huge. Uh, So the labor cost of manufacturing, how much of
Yeah,
that is myth?
I think I talk to fairly smart people, including top economists and people like that, and they'll say, well, labor cost doesn't matter anymore because labor is only 10% of the cost of making something. Yeah? And and I say yes, if you're in an automotive assembly plant, and you're right up here at the top of the pyramid of the bill of materials, and you say, what's the direct labor cost at the assembly plant? Then it could be 10% of the total cost, where the cost is all the stuff they bought and then the cost of assembly. Okay, but if you only at that assembly plant, if you're only including direct labor, like say $25-30 an hour, and you do not include fringes and benefits, so you're missing the fringes and the benefits, and they typically don't include the indirect labor, the people that move material around and do things like that, and they don't include the SG&A, selling, general and administrative, the bosses and accounting and HR and all that.
Right.
So now you've got a much higher percentage. And then if you think of this pyramid again, and they bought all this material, and they're saying, well, the big chunk of it's material. Well, the cost of those castings and those machine parts and those forgings, again, has labor built into them, and the steel that you buy for your forging has labor built into it. So when you take all the labor in the entire pyramid, labor is maybe 60 or 70% of the total cost. The only thing left out is natural gas to produce electricity, and iron ore to create iron, and sand to create glass, and whatever. Everything else is largely labor, and that's the reason. People will say direct labor is only 10%, and I say, well, how come Chinese price is 30% lower than our price. If their labor was free, it could only be 10% lower than our price. How come it's 30% lower? And it's because when those people who do that math, they ignore all these other costs that I just described.
Over the last 3 years of COVID, we've certainly had labor shortages. So when you have a labor shortage, those who are in the labor market, isn't it costing more for labor than less?
Today in the US, it's costing more for labor, but it's doing that all over the world. Wage rates, we've had inflation all over the world. We've had COVID, reduced workforce size, inflation, people getting wages, higher wages. So the costs all over the world have gone up. But the solution in the US is automation, putting in robots, putting in cobots, buying the newest and best equipment to make the product, and in training. Now, I did a study once. I used to sell. I was the president of what's now called GF Machining Solutions, so EDM and high-speed milling machines. And I took a typical EDM part, and I asked 10 shops to make it, do a good job at making it, send in the results. And I took our best guy, our best applications engineer, Doug Brown, and he did it. And he did it in 30-40% less time than they did on average. So, and then we trained them to get them as good as Doug was. You see? So I believe that in many processes, maybe not all, but in many processes, that the best trained specialist, technician, applications engineer, whatever you want to call them, that they can do dramatically better than the average. And so I believe that by hiring smart people, enthusiastic people, good attitude, training them well, that they will increase your productivity substantially.
Let me go backwards a little bit, because we went off onto the track of automation and robotics. But as far as hiring people, training people, and I have to tell you that I'm in the process right now. Our business has been very good, and we're looking to hire more people. And we're running ads not only on our website, but in a couple of these platforms. And we're coming up with zilch, meaning nothing, very little.
Maybe you have to throw a yellow jacket in. or certainly a manufacturing is cool T-shirt.
There you go.
And if you let them know they get one of these, if they stay for 6 months, I'll bet you'll have 100 applying for the jobs.
I think next month I'm gonna have to wear my T-shirt, which you graciously gave me one, under my jacket, and I'll just flash a couple of times.
But I do think that there's no question it's a problem. I had one good piece of news I had. I read an article maybe 4 or 5 days ago about I think it was a Hyundai automotive assembly plant,
right?
Somewhere in the southeast, as I recall, and they had announced the factory, and they just recently announced that they had reached their hiring goal of 2,000 employees 2 years faster than they thought they would.
Wow, that's amazing.
Big company, very good benefits, I'm sure. Pretty good wages because they're trying not to be unionized.
Right.
So they can maybe, like I said, they can maybe offer more than a contract manufacturer can. But the fact that they were able to find 2,000. Now, the thing I'd want to know, in that county, how many companies are there that are almost out of business because all their employees left and went to work for Hyundai?
Right.
That could be tough. But to the extent that people see that, the extent that the youth say, "Huh, my uncle just got a really good job at Hyundai, and maybe I should go into manufacturing because manufacturing." I've been watching Lou Weiss on YouTube, and he and Harry say manufacturing is coming back. It looks like a good career again. So I think there's some good news out there.
Well, there is, and you certainly are a leader in that pack. So how does a contract manufacturer focus on reforging? I'm sorry, reshoring
I knew
to
what you meant.
yeah, there is such a thing as reforging, but that's another topic. So how do they focus on the reshoring so that they get their products more local as opposed to
So,
overseas?
so you're talking about the OEM or about the contract manufacturer?
Contract manufacturing.
Contract manufacturer, okay. First, the OEM should do the math correctly and also think, and specifically think about the possibility of disruption, the possibility of something geopolitical happening that could cause them to be cut off from supply for months to years at a time. And, and so that's what the OEM should do. And the contract manufacturer should pitch that concept to the OEM. So if I were you and I were going into my good customers, sometime each year, you go say, what do you need? You need any new forgings next year? What can we do to help you? Right, a good salesman. And they say, we got enough. If we have a problem, we'll call you. Yeah. I've heard that message. I would say, think about everything you're getting from offshore. Imagine, especially from the riskier places right now, like China. Imagine something happened and you were cut off for 6 months or a year or 2 years. Would your business survive if you and your supply chain were cut off? And if you say that you'd be close to bankrupt in 6 months, then don't you think it would make sense to ensure your survival and bring some of that sourcing back here to the United States, bring it back to Lou, and I'm putting words in your mouth. Give me enough work, I'll expand. I'll
Absolutely.
dedicate work to you if you give me enough work with a nice long-term contract to go with it.
Right.
And
I mean,
and
a
and
big PO.
yeah. So think. I'd ask them, do you have fire insurance on your factories?
Of course,
Yeah, of course. Well, how many factories do you have? 10. What's the chance of any one of them burning down in a year? 2%, 3%. Okay,
maybe.
and yet you insure all of them, and yet you've got product from China coming into all your factories that if you lost that supply would shut all your factories down. So why don't you insure that by sourcing a substantial portion of that work here in the United States? And I, Lou Weiss, would be happy to be your insurance man to do that.
You like the commissions, huh? There's a topic that we haven't touched on, so I'm going a little bit to the left or right. We're having an issue now recently with regards to China and Russia and balloons and fighter planes and all of that stuff. So we have a geopolitical issue that is clearly getting worse. What is going to happen? And this is just an opinion of I'm asking you. What's going to happen if we have a geopolitical issue where, China throws a couple more balloons up, we shoot down a couple more, and the United States says, you know what, we're not going to let any more goods come into the country from your country, which we can't do because there's a lot of product they make that we have to have.
You can't do it. We'd
That
never do that.
we couldn't.
I think they're more likely to stop shipping us things than we are likely to stop buying things.
How smart is that?
Oh, that's stupid. Stupid for us to have let ourselves get into this position. But and why are we there? Because China was a great place to buy decent quality, especially now. Really low prices, 30% or so below the US price. Hardworking people, companies really aggressive that come after you to sell you the product. But we're stupid to have let ourselves be. So it would be one thing to be dependent on Canada, maybe Mexico, but to be that dependent on China is and was totally stupid for all the administrations and all the companies that let it happen. But we are where we are. I think maybe building on what you said, I respect a fellow Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates hedge
Mhm.
fund, the biggest hedge fund in the world.
Right.
And I read an interview with him and he said that he believes the chance of international war involving the U.S., which sounds like China, it doesn't sound like Ireland, okay, that the chance of international war in the next 5 or 10 years, something like that, was 35%. 35%. And what's the outcome going to be? Well, you think about the outcomes. First, we lack the industrial capacity to produce the large ongoing volumes of munitions and rockets and tanks and things like that we were able to do in World War II. But we've lost so much of the manufacturing infrastructure that we're going to be horrible. Because first, we don't have the capacity. And then if you said, okay, we'll build some more factories. Oh, we're going to need machine tools. Where do we get the machine tools? Over in Asia.
We just went backwards.
So it's going to be very hard to like even now with a relatively small war going on between Ukraine and Russia. I don't know how many, tens of thousands of people on each side, as opposed to millions. Okay, Europe and the U.S. are running out of ammunition, rockets, missiles, all the things tanks, the things you need to fight a war. And that's with just that little thing going on in Ukraine and Russia, rather than something happening in Taiwan and China, and maybe expanding from there. So again, from the interest of the company, for their survival, it makes sense to bring the work back. And from the interest of the country, of ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, to have a stable, safe, economically viable country going forward, we need to strengthen our manufacturing so we can protect ourselves.
So that's an excellent reason for reshoring and rebuilding. That goes without saying.
But I think let me give the point I made. I gave a speech at Notre Dame University about 3 weeks ago, and I made the pitch that we need to do that. And I said, and really the net result is finally peace, because if the U.S. is weak, and we know we can't make enough bullets and missiles and have enough fighters and enough factory, and we know we're going to lose a conventional war to China, say, or any country, but most likely China. If we know we're going to lose that, then we're more likely to escalate to nuclear than if we know that we have the solid manufacturing economic background to pay the taxes, to pay for the defense, and to make the product that you need for it. Then we can say we can be more flexible. We can give a little bit where we have to, because we know we're not getting backed in the corner. Because who pulls the knife out first if there's two guys fighting? It's not the big strong guy that can beat up the other guy. It's the weak guy who knows he's going to get beaten up. He goes for the knife or the gun to protect himself. And so we want to be the big strong guy that can say, it's okay, Bill. I know you're kidding. Well, let's work it out, as opposed to bam, bam, bam.
Harry,
let me throw a couple other things. You talked about what can a shop do. They can pitch the advantages of domestic sourcing. On your website, you should have something that says, are you tired of long deliveries, disruptions, difficult communication, quality issues, duties, what have you? We've got the solution. Delivery, communications, ability to keep just-in-time inventories instead of having to balloon your inventories because of unpredictable deliveries. Green, are you worried about the ecological impact of your sourcing? We're right down the street. Green, much improved. You can identify, like if I were a shop, I'd say, let's think about all the customers that we've lost to offshore over the last 20, 30 years, and go to all of them and say, Bill, remember me? Well, I used to sell you a lot of widgets, and how you doing on those widgets now? Are you confident in your supply? If you're not, let's see if there's a way that we can build up your confidence and build up our business and get back to the relationship. Good for the community, good for the country. When you do succeed at reshoring, document it. Write an article. Come to us with it. We'll get it published and get out there in Industry Week or somewhere like that. talking about your if you succeed, I'll bet I could convince Lou to have you on the show with the two of us to talk
Not a,
about your reshoring successes.
not a problem.
Right? Develop. I also say develop broader competence. So U.S. tends to have forge shops, stamping shops, machine shops, wire harness, plating, whatever. And there's a lot of Chinese companies that'll do all that and more. And you can go to them and say, I want a refrigerator that's about this big and it's going to wholesale for $800. And the Chinese company will design the whole thing, source all the components, meet all the regulations, develop the paperwork, package it, and ship it to you. Okay? And it's very hard to find anybody in the US that has that broad. You have to bring 10, 20 shops together to do that. So I always advocate to contract manufacturers to add more value. Start doing assemblies, build your way up here, start sourcing, producing more of the components down here. So now you can offer that more like the complete single source responsibility.
That does mean that they have to pretty much change their business platform and format in order to do the things that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
But time moves on and you have to keep up with the times. By the way, I'd like to just mention that the comment you made about deliveries and so on. I now know that you looked at the All Metals and Forge Group website, because on the front cover, front of the homepage, it says, "Are you tired of long forging deliveries?" And I asked for 8 to 10 weeks. So I'm not plugging myself, but so be it. Harry, do you have any parting words for us?
For everybody who's come back from a previous episode or session, happy to see you again. The key thing is that I've got a goal of bringing 5 or 6 million manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. And the only way I do that is one job at a time. So out there, if you're a company and you've reshored, love to hear about it. If you have the opportunity to reshore, if you're an OEM and you're trying to decide domestic or foreign sourcing, if you're a job shop, contract, trying to convince the OEM to buy from you, email me, contact me through the website.
So let's give the audience your email.
The email is harry.moser, M-O-S-E-R, @reshorenow.org.
And just remember, everybody loves Harry. Harry's great.
As long as they call me and email me and work with me, they love me or not love me. Let's just get the job done.
I got it. Harry, it was great talking to you again. We'll be talking to you next month. Yep. And stay healthy, stay smart. And we're picking up points for your yellow jacket.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Harry.
So turn off the recording for a minute.
So, folks, tune in to Manufacturing Talk Radio every week. Take a look at our website. We've got 5 podcasts: Women in Manufacturing, Harry Moser in Manufacturing, which you just listened to. We have a bunch of his shows. And if you have any questions, if you'd like to be a guest, contact me at LA Weiss at manufacturingmfgtalkradio.com. Thanks a bunch.
Bye, everybody.
I'm just wild about Harry.